Hey everyone, Internet PC's book reader here. Today I want to talk about James by Percival Everett. The previous book I've gone through, The Trunk, is a disappointing mess, which I guess I shouldn't have too much expectation to a Netflix series that didn't even go viral. Most of the series there won't be dark or Castlevania after all. But moving on after that, I want to cleanse my palate with this book, James by Percival Everett. Just like Demon Copperhead, my favorite book from 2023 that was a retelling of David Copperfield, James is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, another classic by Mark Twain, but this is a dark comedy. It was shortlisted in the Booker Prize, it only reached the semi-final of the award, but when I hear people talk about this book, they always talk about it in a positive light, so I'm excited to go through it. The story of the book followed the character James, a slave that belonged to Miss Watson. He's currently waiting for the two boys from the village, Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, to come out of their obvious hiding spot as they were about to pull some prank on him. Since it is to his advantage to let the boys do what they want, he pretends to fall asleep from being too tired, and immediately the two boys approach him. Not like all white people, the two boys do use the N-word completely with a hard R to call or describe James or Jim at that time. And they are not the only ones, since they knew the words from all the other white people in the village. But in their limited way, the boys do want to avoid getting Jim into trouble, since they avoid pranks that might get Jim into a lot of trouble as a slave. After the two boys, mostly Tom, pulled their prank on Jim and ran away, Miss Watson came out and asked Jim if he's seen a book that was missing in the study. Jim asked what he's gonna do with the book, and the two share a laugh. Because what will a slave that can't even talk proper English do with a book? Read them? But Jim is keeping a secret from all the white people. They all can talk proper English. Him, his partner Sadie, and their daughter Lizzie all can speak normally. But both Jim and Sadie had to talk younger slaves like Lizzie how to talk with a fake accent like they do, so they can survive better as slaves. And not just the three of them, all the slaves can talk normally. When they were hanging out and there's no white folk nearby, they talk like they do normally, but they watch their surroundings and change back to their accent every time they see a white people get close. Huck often goes to Jim, and in his own way Huck considers Jim a friend. But he is still a white boy and Jim is a black slave, and Huck's friendship still operates under that power dynamic. And the relationship got more entangled when Miss Watson wanted Jim to look out for Huck because his abusive father is going to come back home. Recently, in a nearby town, a free lighter-skinned black man was burned to death by the townsfolk because he got into a fight and nobody got punished for it, since the ones who burned him are the entire crowd there. Violence goes unpunished once it's done by the masses and all that. So it's best for Jim and the other slaves to lay low. Avoid triggering the white slave owners that often have inferior complex, so it's better to talk like a fool in front of them, better to not have eye contact with them, and it's better to not laugh out loud in front of them in case they think that they were laughing at them. But Huck has been growing more anxious, and he's trying to find comfort by asking a ton of questions to Jim. And despite everything, Jim does worry for the kids, since if a white man abuses his white son, there's really nothing he can do as a slave. But before he got a chance to think of anything, news that Miss Watson, his owner, will sell him to a different city, separating him from his wife and daughter, came to him. So before the sale became official, Jim decided to escape, knowing full well the risk of being a runaway. He hid in an empty island nearby, not risking to even start a fire despite the cold, but he was just there for a couple of days when Huck comes stumbling in. The boy just escaped his father, and he did it by faking his own death, spreading big blood all over his room, and then ran. And because of this, the townsfolk thought that Jim is the one who killed Huck, since he escaped around the same time. So for now, Jim and Huck decided to stay together. While in hiding, Jim sometimes uses normal English accidentally. Once when the townsfolk are bombing the river nearby in an attempt to make Huck's dead body float up, and another time when they found a dead body in a floating house they looted during a flood. It was Huck's father's dead body that Huck did not recognize. Jim recognized him, but he didn't share the information with Huck for many reasons. They traveled using Huck's canoe around the river and mostly ate berries and fish they found in the forest. They got lucky while they were in the floating house and found an ink that Jim kept and some bacon. But when they were mightily chewing on the bacon, a rattlesnake bit Jim. He became delirious with fever because of the snake venom, and in his dream, he is talking to Voltaire about race, racism, and equality. Voltaire is of course the racist French Enlightenment philosopher. Until the end of his life, Voltaire, who believed in equality and pushed for it, also contradictorily believes that black people are inferior to white people. The dream shows that Jim has been reading a ton of books and even teaches the other slaves how to read and give meaning to words to them. He also talks out loud during this dream, and some of them Huck started questioning even further because he talks normal in his dream. Jim spent a few days in fever, and when he started healing, he got worried about his family, so he asked Huck to disguise as a girl and check his family condition, which he accepted. While Huck is away, Jim started writing a journal on his life using the ink we found, and he also built a raft. It's good that he built that raft because he started seeing more people nearing his hiding spot, so when Huck came back and said that some people from the town was following him, they decided to escape further. Huck managed to get into the village, but he can only see Jim's family from afar before he had to escape. So the only thing Jim knows from this is that his family is okay. In their journey now, they mostly travel during the night because they got spotted once when they were rafting in daylight. Then they found a wrecked steamboat that Huck wanted to go abroad for an adventure. Jim decided to follow unwillingly since there might be food there, and in a quick series of events, Huck overheard some robbers inside the ship plotting to murder their friend, but their raft got carried away by the current so they cannot escape. Thankfully, they found an escape boat tied to the steamboat, and in an ironic twist of fate, the robbers got robbed by Jim and Huck. Using the escape boat, they managed to get their raft back and tie it to their new boat, and the robbers' treasure was on the new boat. Jim took the books that even had Voltaire's Candide and Frederick Douglass' narrative of life, while Huck took their gold and diamond. They kept going with their new upgrade. But despite the upgrade, their small boat kept getting pulled by currents from bigger boat in the river, so it eventually broke and they were separated. Jim can't exactly start looking for a white boy as a slave, but he at least met 4 other black men here. He is now in Illinois, a supposedly free of slave state, but it is still America, so white people there just said that they were in Tennessee and not Illinois if black people asked, and kept enslaving black people there. The 4 slaves are survivors of white people hunting and killing slaves war sport, and they helped Jim. They didn't help him with everything since they're slave and Jim is a runaway, but they didn't tell anyone when Jim decided to hide in the forest, and one of them even risked his life giving Jim a pencil for him to write when he asked for it. The slave is young George, and he told Jim to write about his story, Jim's story, and write about their history. Jim stayed for a bit in the forest and wrote some, but eventually it is too risky to stay in one place with no direction, and he do want to get his family back somehow, so he decided to go. On his way, he passed the plantation where the 4 slaves are being held, and he saw young George being tied and whipped because of the very small pencil he gave to Jim. They made eye contact, and George silently urged Jim to run, knowing full well that there's nothing Jim can do for him here, and so Jim ran while young George was hanged. By chance, he found Huck, who at that time was getting involved in the gang fight within 2 white families. They were having their Romeo and Juliet problem that resulted in 4 people dead. Jim managed to save Huck, and Huck this whole time has been fixing their raft, so they continued their journey together. Huck one day decided to go test the build of the raft, so Jim had the chance to sleep and talk with another philosopher whose ideology and action contradict themselves, John Locke. But he can't dream for long because Huck came back in a hurry with 2 white men running from the dogs that are chasing them. These are king and duke, or at least the younger man pretends to be a duke and the older man pretends he's the king of France. These are conmen obviously, and just like all conmen, they are also bad people. But they're adults unlike Huck, so the 4 of them decided to visit a city to buy some food. Jim can come because Duke and King can pretend that he's their slave, otherwise he'll just get captured by the townspeople. While they're in town, Duke and King try to con the Christian there since there was a gathering in the church. They managed to fool them into giving them money, and it was going good until it wasn't. They ran because the con townsfolk wanted to hang them, and while they ran, they found a wanted poster for Jim. Jim and Huck managed to escape not only the townsfolk, but also the conman duo that saw the poster. But Duke and King managed to find them since they can only sail during the night, and just like that, Jim is once more a slave in the market. At first he is Duke and King's slave, but both of them hurt another slave and their master asked for Jim as payment for damaging his property. Then Jim became Mr. Wiley's slave. But a minstrel troupe came, minstrel being the American show that do blackface, specializing in making black people stereotype propaganda to make white people laugh. The leader of the minstrel, Daniel Decatur Emmett, is a real-life historical figure, and he wanted to buy Jim after hearing him sing for Mr. Wiley. Just like Voltaire and John Locke, Daniel is a man that believes in equality but can see past his own racism towards black people, so he will claim that he didn't own Jim, but he's not going to let Jim get away before he got what he paid for buying him, which equal to Jim's entire life working for him without pay. The troupe even almost got into trouble because a man suspected that Jim is just a light-skinned Negro instead of a white man with blackface. So before he got into further trouble hanging with people who were liberally racist, he escaped the minstrel group, and with him came Norman, a really light-skinned black man who was passing as a white man in the minstrel in order to be able to save his wife. They decided to try to basically attempt a slave scam maneuver since Norman can pretend that he's gym master, sell him, and then both of them escape and rinse and repeat till they can buy their family. They managed to sell Jim to a logging place owned by Henderson, but Henderson liked to whip his slave, and on the day he bought Jim, he whipped him. Because one of the slave Luke is acting like Samuel L. Jackson in Django Unchained, if you know what I mean. Jim decided to escape that night despite his injuries, bringing with him a girl slave named Sammy, who had been raped by Henderson since he was a child. They managed to reunite with Norman, but Henderson and the white man in town found them, and they kept shooting despite all three of them already escaped far into the river. Sammy was shot dead by one of them, so she can enjoy her newfound freedom for too long. Jim and Norman continues until they manage to board a cruiser that was run by a single slave putting coal in it for who knows how long. The ship kinda exploded because of its egg, and when Jim regained consciousness, Huck was there too in the water, screaming his name for help, as does Norman, who is on the opposite direction of Huck. Jim can only save one of them. We had a big revelation here. Huck is Jim's son. That's why he saved Huck instead of Norman, who is another man born into slavery just like him. Huck is like Norman, a mix between a black person and a white person who was born without any of the black on him. In the meantime, the civil war between the North and the South started, with one of the reasons that the North was against slavery and the South was the Confederate traitors. But for Jim, he just wanted to see his family again. So he goes back to Miss Watson's place with Huck, where he found out that his wife and daughter has been sold to a breeder, a slaver who bought slaves and made them breed like stock, where then the new children will be made into slaves so they can sell them. Right after that, he had to hide in a corner while one of his friends was raped by his master, and Jim finally snapped. He killed and took a gun from the rapist, making it look like he drowned, and then he went to save his wife and daughter and took them to the north, where because of the war, they will be safe for a while, even if the white people are still calling him with a hard R and are uncomfortable with having more black people come into their town. He and his family are free now, and no one will call him Jim again because he is James and he is no longer running. This is legit the best fiction narrative here. It told part of the history of slavery by retelling a classic and transform it in such a meaningful way, and there's even a meta element to it. Huckleberry Finn and Mark Twain himself was criticized for trying to tackle racism in a half-assed way, still in a very white people who is blind to his own racism kind of way. Like Voltaire, like John Locke, like Daniel Emmett. In today's era where most racism are also cowards who don't even have the balls to be openly racist, this book can hopefully help people see how this kind of racism operates. And it managed to do all of that by still being entertaining as hell. I was reading this in the middle of playing Baldur's Gate 3, and this book still makes me want to just continue reading it. And Baldur's Gate 3 is a very addictive game if you've ever played it. I give this an easy 5. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.